The case involving the crime against 8 members of the Roden family became one of the most notorious and complex in Ohio. Overnight, the motto, "all for one and one for all," became fatal for each family member. Only the minor children were spared from the mass violence. The investigation spanned over 10 states in the USA. Detectives conducted more than 600 interviews, gathering around 700 witness statements. Various theories were considered: self-harm, retaliation by illegal substance dealers, and cult sacrifices. Attorney General Mike DeWine even suspected local residents of withholding crucial information. It seemed the investigation had hit a dead end. Until a moment came, when a solution, lying on the surface, became apparent. As it turns out, the most complex situations are often rooted in simplicity. This story illustrates how familial bonds turned into a bloodbath. In Pike County, Ohio, USA, it all began with a simple crush. Hannah Mae Roden was 13 years old when she met 18-year-old Edward, Jake Wagner. The young man invited her to the prom. From that evening on, they were inseparable. Their relationship elicited mixed feelings. Undoubtedly, the love that blossomed between them was visible to the naked eye. On the other hand, the age difference raised many questions and doubts. However, the young couple's parents did not obstruct their relationship. After all, everyone had been young once. Over time, the Roden and Wagner families started spending weekends and parties together. Love was passionate and carefree. When Hannah turned 15, she announced her pregnancy. Upon hearing the news, Jake was overjoyed. He anticipated how delighted his family would be with the new addition. The Wagners highly valued traditions and lineage, hence adored children. In them, they saw the continuation of their lineage. Even ancestral names were passed down from generation to generation. Jake's father was named George Wagner III, and his brother, George Wagner IV. The Rodens, on the other hand, had a simpler, less ostentatious approach to children, but this did not diminish their family values. Christopher and Dana Roden, Hannah's parents, remained very close and united even after their divorce. They loved their 3 children and dedicated their lives to their well-being. Unlike the Wagners, the Roden family had a modest income. 40-year-old Christopher worked as a handyman at the Big Bear Lake family complex, while 37-year-old Dana was a nurse's aide at a youth rehabilitation center. Nevertheless, they managed to instill humanity and diligence in Christopher Jr., Hannah, and Clarence, Frankie. Everyone was thrilled about the arrival of little Sophie. To celebrate her birthday, a grand party was organized. Soon after, Jake suggested that Hannah move in with him and his family, arguing that it would make life more comfortable for both of them, a point hard to contest when living in a trailer. His logic seemed sound, but Hannah declined. By that time, she had come to understand her partner better and saw the invitation as an attempt to limit her independence. Moreover, the once caring and attentive young man had become suspicious and aggressive. Jake had resorted to physical aggression on several occasions. His rough behavior cooled Hannah's feelings for him. Her refusal became a bone of contention for the Wagners. Now, each of Sophie's parents was determined to gain full custody of the girl. The families began to advocate for their own interests. Driven by his desire, Jake went as far as to threaten his beloved, angry that she refused to sign a document transferring custody rights to him and his brother. In a fit of anger, he once messaged her, saying that if necessary, he would take the daughter by force. If you truly loved her, you wouldn't resist. You would have long ago handed her over to be raised in a healthy environment, he claimed. For some reason, he believed the Rodens posed a danger to Sophie. Such conversations continued for 2 years, during which Jake became more tyrannical. Hannah grew tired of the total control and in March 2015 completely ended the relationship. Moreover, she had come to know something alarming. It turned out that Jake's brother, George IV, had gained custody of a son by threatening the boy's mother with a weapon. This confirmed that the Wagners saw moral and physical coercion as acceptable means. To protect herself and her daughter from this unscrupulous family, the young Roden decided to distance herself. She wanted to raise her daughter alone, while working as a nurse's assistant and finishing school. The situation worsened when everyone learned about Hannah's second pregnancy. Although she claimed the child was from another man, Jake had his doubts. He attempted to find out if she was seeing someone else. So, in December 2015, he hacked into her social media accounts but found nothing incriminating. At the end of his search, he noticed that the woman was communicating with George IV's former mother-in-law, which sparked genuine interest. A court case was soon to follow, during which the Wagner family repeatedly interacted with the woman. "They'll have to eliminate me before they can take custody of my daughter," Hannah wrote in her message. Jake shared the details of the correspondence with his family, infuriating them. Then his maternal grandmother, 65-year-old Rita Newcomb, forged an important document regarding custody. Moreover, during a court session to determine the granddaughter's residence, Christopher Roden and George Wagner III had a serious disagreement. Ultimately, the relationship between the families completely deteriorated. Soon, a terrible idea occurred to the Wagner family. Hannah was so uncooperative that they felt the need to eliminate her, as well as the entire Roden family, who could claim custody of Sophie. This insane thought turned into a monstrous plan that solidified by Christmas 2016. People's thoughts during the festive season are usually focused on love and creation, which cannot be said for the Wagner couple, who organized a vote. It was decided whether they would implement their plan. All family members agreed. The only thing left was to assign roles and prepare. 5 months were spent studying the Roden homes and surveillance cameras, with special attention to their daily routines and work schedules. Each person in the criminal plot was responsible for something. For instance, Angela Wagner bought sneakers for all family members to wear at a predetermined time. To prevent the victims from seeking help, she acquired a special device to block communication, planning to secretly install it on the Rodens' phones. To minimize noise, George III suggested making homemade silencers. He also took care of the transportation on the night of the crime, aiming to secure a van that would not draw attention. Sophie was to stay safe at home with Angela, as the court had granted Hannah and Jake joint custody. The Wagners chose a time when it was their turn to look after the girl, meticulously planning every detail for a flawless execution. On the night of April 21, 2016, George Wagner III decided to visit Christopher Roden, allegedly to offer him a job opportunity that could improve his financial situation. The job offer was merely a pretext to gain entry into the house. Unsuspectingly, Roden Sr. opened the door. On the morning of April 22, 2016, at about 8 p.m., Bobby Jo Manley, Dana Roden's sister, entered Christopher's trailer. She did this daily since the day he had offered her a job. Bobby took care of the animals belonging to the Roden family. She noticed someone was inside, which was unusual for that time when everyone typically went about their business. Inside the trailer, in a pool of blood, lay Christopher and 38-year-old Gary, his cousin. The men lived together. In horror, she grabbed the phone and dialed emergency services, reporting what she had seen and requesting assistance at 4077 Union Hill Road. Shocked, Bobby proceeded to the homes of other relatives. She knocked loudly on one of their doors. Soon, a 3-year-old boy, Clarence Roden's son, appeared. She asked him where his parents were, but the boy did not respond, only pointing towards the bed. Entering the house, she screamed at the sight of 20-year-olds Clarence and Hannah Hazel, his wife. The couple was deceased, with their 6-month-old baby stirring between them, alive but splattered with the blood of his parents. After Bobby's 911 call, the police immediately headed to the given address. As they approached the Roden property, they were stopped by a neighbor. Sensing trouble, he asked the officers to check 2 more addresses of the family members. He was right. In the third trailer, police found bloodied bodies. The victims were identified as Dana, 19-year-old Hannah, and 16-year-old Christopher. The attackers spared Hannah's youngest child, a baby girl only a few days old. Later, another victim was discovered, 44-year-old Kenneth, the elder Roden's brother, who lived a 15-minute walk from the others. By 2 in the afternoon, 8 victims had been identified: Christopher, Dana, Clarence, Hannah Hazel, Christopher Jr., Hannah Mae, Kenneth, and Gary. The only survivors were small children: a 3-year-old, a 6-month-old baby, and a newborn just 4 days old, along with 2-year-old Sophie, who was at the Wagner's home at the time of the incident. After examining the bodies, police surmised that all of the victims had been killed in their sleep by gunshot wounds. Detectives later pieced together the events of that night. The patriarch of the family was awake when the attackers burst into the house, as evidenced by a wound on his right arm. Christopher attempted to defend himself, but was hit with 9 shots to the head, torso, and limbs. 5 bullets were removed from Dana Roden's neck and head. The rest of the family was killed by gunshots to the head. Gary was shot 5 times. Christopher Jr. was shot 4 times. Clarence and his wife Hannah were shot 3 times each, and Hannah Mae was shot twice. Kenneth was the only one to be shot once. In total, the assailants fired 32 shots, some even posthumously. In addition, bruises were found on some of the bodies, indicating physical abuse. Since no one in the vicinity heard anything, investigators concluded that the perpetrators used silencers, indicating a carefully planned and executed act. It was clear that the victims were not random. Someone wanted revenge on the entire family. During the search, police found 5 Remington shell casings of different types and an unused bullet from a different model of gun. In addition, the scattered nature of the trailers indicated that more than one person had committed the crime. Leonard Manley, Dana's father, claimed, "The criminals knew the Rodens well, or the dogs would have been barking all over the pike." The question of who dared to commit such an act kept police officers busy. The Attorney General's office provided more than $20,000 for the funeral of the Roden family. The deceased were interred in several stages. On April 28, 2016, Gary was the first of the victims to be buried in South Shore, Kentucky. He was followed by Hannah Hazel, whose farewell was held on May 1st in the village of Otway, Scioto County, Ohio. The other victims were buried on May 3rd in West Portsmouth, in the same county. Many local residents came to say goodbye to the family and pay their respects. As for the fate of the surviving children, they were placed in the care of relatives. A wave of panic swept through the neighborhood. The police urged the relatives of the Rodens to take necessary precautions and advised all residents of Pike to stay away from their homes at night. The cold-blooded mass murder outraged residents across the state, who demanded that the results of the investigation be made public and that the perpetrators be apprehended as soon as possible. Cincinnati businessman Jeff Ruby offered $25,000 for information that would help arrest and convict those involved in the murder, but he later declined the reward offer. No less than 100 individuals were part of the investigative task force working on the Roden case. Following the funerals as part of the investigation, 3 trailers belonging to the slain family were towed away. The following day, several more vehicles met the same fate, all transported to a secure facility. This was done to preserve evidence and protect the personal belongings of the deceased. After the investigation, the family's cars and farming equipment were planned to be returned to the victims' relatives. Forensic specialists joined the investigation. Trailers were meticulously examined. However, no DNA of the suspects was found in any of them. Cameras had been installed in the mobile homes, but they too provided no information as they had been disabled. Those who planned the crime had thought through every detail meticulously. It seemed there were no significant leads until detectives discovered something. Cannabis crops were found at 3 crime scenes. In one location, there were about 200 plants. Officers believed the cannabis was grown for sale, not personal use, leading to speculation about the involvement of Mexican drug traffickers. However, the amount of cannabis found was too insignificant to suggest an attack by an entire cartel. In January 2017, a close relative of the Roden family was arrested for drug trafficking, which was considered a coincidental circumstance. Leonard Manley stated that his daughter had no involvement with the cannabis operations. "They're trying to drag Dana through the mud, and I don't like it," he asserted. Some family members confirmed that Christopher and Kenneth Roden, the older brothers, grew marijuana, but were unaware of any large-scale cultivation. The theory of a family feud over criminally obtained money was also debunked. Alongside the prohibited substances, specialized equipment for breeding chickens for cockfighting, as well as cages with fighting cocks, were found at the Rodens. It soon became clear that illegal cockfights were not the cause of the homicides either. Months went by without uncovering the true motive behind the crime. It reached a point where, on April 13, 2017, local authorities announced they lacked sufficient evidence to make any arrests. Nevertheless, prosecutor Rob Young stated the investigation was ongoing, suggesting they had some leads they were not yet ready to disclose. Another year passed, and the second anniversary of the mass crime received little attention, with no coverage in the local press, and neither the sheriff nor the prosecutor attending the memorial service. This led the community to believe the investigation had stalled. Unexpectedly, on May 12, 2017, a SWAT team raided a home in Pike County, 10 miles from the crime scene, initially searching for suspects, but later revealed to be gathering evidence. Detectives also searched a house in Adams County once owned by Jake Wagner, though he had sold it by then. On June 20, 2017, the investigation publicly shifted focus to the Wagner family. 26-year-old Jake, 27-year-old George III, 47-year-old George IV, and 48-year-old Angela, who lived 15 miles from the victims. The Wagners had moved to Kenai, Alaska, citing difficulties staying in the area. They claimed to have loved the Roden family, stating their deaths caused them immense suffering. Rob Young's words from a year earlier proved true, as the investigation had made a breakthrough and was now seeking information from the public on the Wagners' discussions about firearms, ammunition, vehicles, etc., 2 years prior. It wasn't long before the suspects, running low on funds, returned to Ohio, where detectives had gathered enough evidence for arrests, including proving Jake had hacked into Hannah's account. During the examination of the Wagner family's devices, search queries related to guardianship were discovered. It was also found that Angela had purchased sneakers for the entire family just a few weeks before the crime. The tread pattern of one of these matched that found in one of the trailers. Officers believed Angela was the mastermind behind the horrific scheme, with Jake as the primary executor. According to the investigation, each family member was involved in the criminal act. On November 13, 2018, the Attorney General announced the arrest of the Wagner couple, as well as their sons. They were charged with planning and carrying out the termination of life. Rita Newcomb, Angela's 65-year-old mother, and Frederica Wagner, George III's mother, were also arrested. They faced charges of perjury and obstructing justice. In 2019, Rita Newcomb underwent handwriting analysis, which proved her involvement in forging a guardianship document for Sophie. Later, to avoid imprisonment, she struck a plea deal. The charges against Frederica Wagner were dropped in June 2019. The other Wagners remained incarcerated, having refused to cooperate with the investigation. They denied any involvement in the deaths of the Rodens and expressed sorrow over their passing, wishing for the real perpetrators to be caught. However, on April 22, 2021, 5 years after the tragic incident, Jake decided to make a deal with the prosecution. The agreement was that he would disclose details of the crime in exchange for all family members receiving life sentences instead of the death penalty. Wagner Jr. admitted to taking the lives of 5 out of 8 individuals. Thus, he pleaded guilty to 23 criminal charges, including 8 counts of aggravated crime. The remaining charges included burglary, conspiracy, illegal possession of dangerous ammunition, forgery of evidence and documents, interception of telegrams and oral messages, unauthorized use of property, obstruction of justice, involvement in corrupt activities, and unlawful intimate conduct with a young woman. He indicated that eliminating the mother was seen as the only way to secure custody of his daughter. By taking Hannah's life, he felt compelled to do the same to the other Rodens, fearing they would seek vengeance and refused to relinquish the girl. The next to stand trial was Angela. On September 10th, she pled guilty to conspiracy to commit aggravated crime, robbery, and evidence tampering. She also agreed to testify against the other defendants. In exchange, the charge of ending a life was dropped. Angela was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The trial of George Wagner IV began on August 28, 2022. The man denied any involvement in the crimes, insisting he was completely unaware. Conversely, the prosecution argued his participation in planning, executing, and concealing the crimes. Ultimately, George IV was found guilty on 22 counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The trial for George III is scheduled for February 2024. Despite his entire family being convicted, he continues to claim innocence, likely facing the same fate as his older son. This once harmonious relationship ended in tragedy. The collective madness of the Wagners is beyond understanding and forgiveness. Their actions left 3 children orphaned. What will become of Sophie when she grows up and realizes what happened? In their fight for custody and a facade of well-being, the Wagners deprived the young girl of loving parents, relatives, and a peaceful life.